As you can see here, this is a picture of the brain, and I'll be discussing the structures and the function of the brain. So let's start with the corpus callosum. The corpus callosum connects and shares information between the two cerebral hemispheres of the brain. So it connects the left and the right hemispheres of the brain. And its function was discovered in patients who had epilepsy when this part was severed in the last-ditch effort to limit their convulsive seizures. So, since the corpus callosum is responsible for allowing communication between both sides of the brain, the left and the right, when it's severed, which has occurred with split brain epilepsy patients, this has been able to reduce seizures. Why is that? Because let's say one side of the brain is experiencing that high activity, the high electrical activity. So when the brain is split, it's unable to give it on the other side of the body. So when patients are having epilepsy, when they have a lot of seizures, split brain surgery allows for that corpus callosum to not work in a function of connecting that left and right side. And when it happens, since the seizures are debilitating and you sever the corpus callosum and there's no more connection between the left and the right, it's actually helpful for that patient because there's a more controlled side for the seizures occurring. Next, we have the thalamus. The thalamus is known as the relay station for sensor information. It sends incoming sensor information to the appropriate cortical areas except for smell. Thalamus does not have to do with smell. Now we have here, right underneath the thalamus, we have the hypothalamus. The hypothalamus, I like to think about the fact that the thalamus is like this big thing over here, and then hypo, low, so it's lower, so it's right under the thalamus. This hypothalamus is responsible for maintaining homeostasis and integrates with the endocrine system through the hypophyseal portal system that connects it to the anterior pituitary. This is what's responsible for regulating emotion and autonomic functions, so fight, flight, and sexual drive. The hypothalamus is known for the four F's, which are fight, flight, feeding, and fornicating. Next, we have here the pituitary gland. The pituitary gland is also known as the master gland of the endocrine system. Why is that? Because it releases hormones that regulate growth, metabolism, reproduction, and stress response. Now we have here the forebrain. In the forebrain, we have the telencephalon, and that's responsible for complex perceptual, cognitive, and behavioral processes. It's associated with emotion and memory, and it has the greatest influence on human behavior. We also have here the temporal lobe, and the temporal lobe controls sound processing and speech perception. Specifically, we have in the temporal lobe the Wernicke's area, and the Wernicke's area is responsible for speech comprehension. The temporal lobe is very important for memory and emotion. Now we have the amygdala, which controls fear, aggression, and emotional learning. So hyperactivation of the amygdala is actually linked to anxiety and PTSD. So that's a little fun fact. Next, we have the hippocampus, which is part of the limbic system. The hippocampus is essential for forming long-term memories. It strengthens memories and communicates with other parts of the limbic system through an extension called the fornix. The midbrain, also known as the mesencephalon, it contains superior colliculus, which is the visual reflexes, and the inferior colliculus, the auditory reflexes. So, for example, turning head toward a loud sound, we're using your inferior colliculus reflex, and that's all in the midbrain. Now we have here pons. So pons relates information between the cortex and the medulla, involved in sleep, respiration, swallowing, and facial expression. The medulla oblongata controls vital functions such as breathing, heart rate, blood pressure, digestion, just things that we don't have to think about that our body naturally does. Damage here in the medulla oblongata is very life-threatening. And lastly, we have the cerebellum. The cerebellum controls and maintains posture, balance, and coordination of our body's movements. So it's also responsible for fine motor movements. So for example, walking in a straight line or motor learning, such as playing a piano, it all has to do with the cerebellum.